Hello there, film lovers! Welcome back to another episode of Tim and Tom's Film Nights, where our resident elderly British gentlemen, Timothy and myself, Tom, are here to provide you with our unsolicited opinions on some of the finest films that Hollywood has to offer. Today, we're diving into the world of dystopian science fiction with the Divergent Series, Allegiant. Now, before we dive too deep, I must first apologize for my terrible pun earlier. As a completely normal human being with a functioning circulatory system, I promise to try and refrain from such cheap jokes in the future, or at least until Timothy starts talking about his favorite historical period again. Timothy, my dear fellow, what are your initial thoughts on this film? Are you ready to embark on a thrilling journey of... Wait, no. It's a dystopian world we're talking about. So, do you think they managed to create a compelling vision of the future? Or were you more focused on the fashion choices?
Well, Tom, dear boy, I must say that I found myself quite engrossed in the world of the Divergent series, Allegiant. As a film purporting to be set in a dystopian future, it did manage to evoke a sense of oppression and unease. The story revolves around a young woman named Triss, who, along with her ragtag group of friends, must navigate a world where the few remaining humans are divided into factions based on their supposed virtues or traits. As someone who generally doesn't indulge in science fiction escapism, I found the premise to be rather intriguing. The idea of a society that has been fractured and divided by these rigidly imposed societal constructs is sadly all too relevant in our own tumultuous times. However, it was the themes of identity, self-discovery, and resistance against oppression that truly resonated with me. The protagonist, Triss, embarks on a journey of self-discovery as she learns about her true origins and the sinister nature of the society she's been living in. Along the way, she forms alliances and battles against various adversaries, both external and internal. The film does a commendable job of portraying the struggles that individuals face when faced with their own limitations, societal or otherwise. However, I must admit that I did find some aspects of the storytelling to be a bit predictable. The cliched trope of the charismatic villain who believes he knows best for humanity's future, been there, seen it in countless other films. And while the CG effects were decent enough to transport me into this futuristic world, I couldn't help but, yearn for a bit more originality in terms of the overall narrative structure. But I suppose that's just me nitpicking, eh? Now, Tom, as someone who claims to adore science fiction, how did you find yourself immersed in this dystopian world? Did it live up to your expectations, or were you left feeling a bit unplugged?
Well, Timothy, my dear chap, I must say that while the Divergent series, Allegiant did manage to entertain me with its dystopian world-building and action-packed sequences, it failed to truly captivate me on a deeper level. As someone who generally enjoys a good bit of science fiction escapism, I found myself occasionally bored by the predictability of the plot twists and cliches we've seen time and again in this genre. The characters themselves were somewhat flat and underdeveloped, with little to no room for emotional growth or depth. And while the world building was decent enough to transport me into this post-apocalyptic landscape, I couldn't help but yearn for a bit more originality in terms of the overall storytelling. That said, there were some moments of respite sprinkled throughout the film. The visuals were indeed impressive, with some stunning aerial shots and CG effects that made me believe in this bleak future for a brief moment. And while the romantic subplot between Triss and her love interest was predictable to a T, there were some moments of, genuine chemistry that kept me slightly invested in their cough storyline. But alas, as a fan of science fiction and dystopian literature, I found myself wishing that the filmmakers had delved deeper into the source material and explored more complex themes such as the nature of power, the consequences of blind obedience, and the importance of individuality in the face of oppression. Instead, we were left with a mediocre action flick that failed to truly challenge or engage me on any level beyond surface-level entertainment. But, hey, I suppose it's, better than watching paint dry, right? Or maybe not, considering my own profession. Ah, the irony of life. So, Timothy, dear fellow, what do you think of the film's adaptation from the novel Allegiant by Veronica Roth? Do you think they managed to capture the essence of the book's themes and storyline on screen? Or were you left feeling a bit, unbearable?
Well, Tom Dearboy, as someone who hasn't had the pleasure of delving into the pages of Allegiant by Veronica Roth, I must confess to being somewhat unfamiliar with the source material. However, based on your brief summary and my own personal experience with adaptations, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some notable differences between the novel and its cinematic counterpart. Adapting a complex storyline and rich world building into a single feature-length film is no easy feat. And inevitably, certain elements and nuances are bound to be lost along the way. That being said, I'm sure diehard fans of the book series would argue passionately about any perceived deviations from the original story. But then again, as they say, the movie always sucks compared to the book, don't they? As for my own personal opinion, I found the Divergent series Allegiant to be a mediocre entry into the post-apocalyptic dystopian science fiction genre. While it did manage to keep me moderately entertained with its action sequences and world building, it ultimately failed to deliver on its potential for depth and emotional resonance. The characters were underdeveloped and the plot predictable, making it difficult for me as a seasoned film aficionado to truly connect with them or become invested in their plight. So, Tom, dear fellow, as someone who has read Allegiant by Veronica Roth, do you think the filmmakers did justice to the source material? Or perhaps like myself, are you more inclined to believe that adapting a book's intricate plot and rich character development into a 2-hour cinematic experience is simply impossible?
Well, Timothy, dear chap, I must admit that the casting choices for the Divergent series Allegiant were hit and miss, if I may be blunt. Shailene Woodley took on the role of Triss, and while she certainly possesses a certain physicality suited to the character, her performance often bordered on mediocre, lacking the emotional depth and nuance required for such an intricate role. As for her love interest, played by Theo James, he brought a much-needed dash of charisma and brooding charm to his portrayal of Four, but again, failed to truly captivate me with his performance. The supporting cast members fared slightly better, with the standout being Mila Kunis as Triss' mentor, who brought a touch of warmth and wisdom to her brief screen time. Unfortunately, many characters were underdeveloped or simply forgettable, which is a shame considering the rich source material they had to draw from. As for the acting itself, while there were moments of genuine chemistry between some of the cast members, overall it felt rather pedestrian and formulaic. The action sequences were well executed, but lacked the visceral impact and excitement that truly great science fiction action flicks should evoke. In short, while there were some decent performances scattered throughout the film, they failed to elevate it above its predictable plot points and mediocre storytelling. So, Timothy, dear fellow, do you share my mixed feelings towards the acting in the Divergent series, Allegiant? Or perhaps you found yourself more immersed in the world of Triss and her ragtag group of rebels?
Well, Tom, dear boy, I must admit that while the Divergent series, Allegiant didn't exactly set the world ablaze with its cultural impact, it did manage to garner a dedicated fan base, particularly among young adults who were drawn to its dystopian world and rebellious characters. Its themes of oppression, self-discovery, and resistance resonated with many viewers, especially in the tumultuous political landscape of its time. The film also spawned a renewed interest in the book series by Veronica Roth, which in turn led to a surge in young people picking up reading habits, a positive side effect, if you will. However, as with most franchises, the cultural impact of the Divergent series, Allegiant faded relatively quickly after its initial release, replaced by newer, shiny, and more innovative science fiction offerings. While it may not be remembered as a classic in the annals of science fiction cinema, it did manage to provide some escapist entertainment during its brief moment in the spotlight. So, Tom, dear chap, do you think there was any lasting cultural impact left by the Divergent series, Allegiant? Or, like most short-lived fads, has it been relegated to a footnote in cinematic history?
Well, Timothy, while the Divergent series, Allegiant, may not be remembered as a cinematic masterpiece, it did manage to entertain a certain demographic for its time. Its themes of oppression, self-discovery, and resistance resonated with many viewers, especially the young adults who formed its core audience. While the franchise's cultural impact may have been short-lived compared to other science fiction classics, it did manage to spark a renewed interest in reading among some viewers. As for me, I personally found the film to be a mediocre entry into the post-apocalyptic dystopian science fiction genre. While it had its moments of action and world building, ultimately, it failed to deliver on its potential for depth and emotional resonance. However, that's just my humble opinion, dear viewers. I urge you to watch the film yourself and let us know what you thought about it in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and fellow science fiction enthusiasts. Until next time, farewell, and remember, in a world gone mad, it's comforting to know that there are still some who appreciate a good dystopian flick.